Chevrolet introduced the K5 Blazer in 1969, based on their full-size pickup. Aimed at small utility wagons that were gaining popularity at the time, wheelbase was shortened to 105 inches, and length was only 178 inches. Weight was around 3,800 pounds, and it had leaf springs and drum brakes all the way around. Base engine was a 4.1-liter 250 straight six with 155 gross horsepower, with an optional 200 horsepower 5-liter 307 or 255 horsepower 5.7-liter 350 high-torque V8. It was available with part-time four-wheel drive and a removable top, and naturally, GMC got a version as the Jimmy. 1970 added a bigger 4.8-liter 292 straight six with 170 horsepower, but it was only offered for 2 years. The trucks got a minor facelift for 1971, and of course they moved to net horsepower ratings for 1972, at 110 horsepower for the 6, and 130 or 165 for the V8s. Like the pickups, the Blazer and Jimmy moved to the rounded line square body design of 1973. They grew to 185 inches long on a 107-inch wheelbase, and the powertrain carried over, with the top 350 up to 175 horsepower, which was road tested with a maximum of 9 miles per gallon, compared to 13 miles per gallon for the base 6. The smaller V8 was dropped for 1974, but for 1975 a small block 400 was added, with 185 horsepower, and changes would be pretty minimal for the rest of the decade. It would move to rectangular headlights in 1980, in anticipation of the refresh for 1981. That included a facelift. The 400 was dropped, but there was now a 305 with 130 to 160 horsepower, and an updated transfer case. For 1982, a 6.2-liter diesel was introduced, providing 135 horsepower and the same 240 pound-feet of torque as the 305. The two-wheel drive versions would be discontinued after the end of the year, but the Blazer would begin to see military service as the M109 Cuck V, with 1984 being the last year of the 6-cylinder model, except in some export markets, partly because of the introduction of the smaller S10 Blazer in 1983, called the S15 Jimmy at GMC. Based on the new compact S10 pickup, it was 170 inches long on a 101-inch wheelbase, and weighed less than 3,200 pounds in four-wheel drive form. Power came from an 83 horsepower 2-liter inline 4, an 110 horsepower 2.8-liter V6, or a 58 horsepower 2.2-liter Isuzu diesel, which would be dropped after 1984, when the base engine became a bigger 2.5-liter Iron Duke with similar power. But a move to fuel injection for 1986 increased horsepower to 98 and to 125 in the V6. The full-size Blazer moved to throttle body injection for 1987 for improved power, putting the 305 at 170 and the 350 at 210 horsepower. And updates for 1988 included a trip meter, the antenna being moved from the windshield to the fender, and other minor details, while the small Blazer got an available 4.3-liter V6, increasing output to 150 horsepower. Then the full-size Blazer saw a facelift, an upgraded rear axle, and accessory belts for 1989, with features increasing in 1990, with another string of updates that included anti-lock brakes. The S10 would follow suit with a facelift the following year, dropping the small 6, and it gained a 4-door version mid-year, which was longer at 177 inches on a 107-inch wheelbase. The tailgate was updated, and four-wheel anti-lock brakes became standard. And with increased interest in SUVs, Oldsmobile got a version as the Bravada, with the new Smart Track four-wheel drive system. Then 1992 models moved to an electric transfer case with a dash-mounted selector. There was a new full-size Blazer for 1993, and the GMC version was renamed Yukon. They grew to 188 inches long on a 112-inch wheelbase and weighed around 4,500 pounds. The 350 carried over, still at 210 horsepower, and EPA rated at 13 miles per gallon in the city. It would soon be joined by a 6.5-liter Detroit diesel. With the introduction of a 4-door variant in 1995, U.S. versions were renamed Tahoe, and the smaller model became simply the Blazer. But in many export markets, the large version would be called the Grand Blazer, where a 4.2-liter turbo diesel may have been offered. The 4-door variants were bigger than the 2 doors, but smaller than the Suburban, only being 199 inches long on a 118-inch wheelbase. The compact Blazer was restyled for 1995. The new two-door versions were 195 inches long on a 101-inch wheelbase, and four doors were 181 inches long on a 107-inch wheelbase. The only domestic engine was the 190 horsepower 4.3-liter V6, but export models could have an 123 horsepower 2.2-liter inline four, and different front styling, depending on the market, and in some cases it may have been badged as the Opel Blazer. For 1996, there was a new ZR2 off-road package on the Blazer with upgraded tires and suspension and more. Around the same time, a limited handling package and Z71 off-road package appeared on the bigger Tahoe and Grand Blazer. But the redesigned version introduced in 2000 would see the end of both the two-door and the Grand Blazer name. Top-line versions of the small Blazer became the Trailblazer, but in 2002, there was an all-new Trailblazer, effectively replacing the Blazer. But the old Blazer would continue on through 2005, and even gained an extreme appearance package. The new Trailblazer was only offered as a four-door, initially with a 4.2-liter Vortec V6, providing 270 horsepower. It was 192 inches long on a 113-inch wheelbase, and weighed 4,500 to 4,700 pounds, with an extended EXT version that was 208 inches long on a 129-inch wheelbase, with various similar models being spread across various GM divisions. 2003 added an optional 5.3-liter V8, only raising horsepower to 290, but torque went up 50. Horsepower would increase in 2005 to 290 on the 6 and 300 on the V8. But the new Super Sport of 2006 added a 6-liter version of the 8, providing a robust 395 horsepower, offered in two- and all-wheel drive, although sales were limited. The Trailblazer would be replaced after 2009, but export markets would get a new Trailblazer based on the Colorado pickup starting in 2011, typically badged as the Holden Trailblazer. It was 192 to 195 inches long, depending on the market, using a 112-inch wheelbase. Engines included a 239 horsepower 3.6-liter petrol V6 and either a 2.5-liter or 2.8-liter Duramax diesel with 148 to 197 horsepower, again depending on the market. Then Chevrolet introduced a new Blazer in 2019 as a mid-sized crossover, using an 113-inch wheelbase. It was 191 inches long, or 197 inches long in three-row form, with weight between 4,100 and 4,400 pounds. Base engine became a 2.5-liter inline four with 192 horsepower, with an optional 3.6-liter V6 with 308 horsepower, although a 2-liter turbo with 231 horsepower was added for 2020, with export markets in mind. It would get a facelift for 2023 that added more features, such as QI wireless charging, which had nothing to do with the electric version introduced in 2024, with two different sizes of battery packs, increasing overall weight by more than 1,000 pounds. The top trim level being badged as a Super Sport and providing 557 horsepower, which was also being sold as a 498 horsepower 9C1 police package. First-year sales of the electric version were just under 30,000, compared to just over 55,000 for the gas version, far short of what some other Chevrolet SUVs are doing. But in an SUV-heavy market, it may stick around for quite a while yet. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.